Welcome back to another deck tech video where I break down how a deck works. Today I'll be covering a deck that started because of a joke between me and my friends from when I first started playing Magic. But before I do, if you can consider subscribing, it's free and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get into it. Today I'll be covering a commander that my friends always made jokes about me pulling from a Chaos pack, and well, I did, and this was Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. This is a massive 10/10 Eldrazi with Indestructible, and it also exiles 2 permanents on cast. On top of all of that, whenever it attacks, the defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. This card is obviously really powerful. The major drawback is that it costs 10 mana. That being said, this deck is a pretty simple construction. It's about 1/3 ramp, 1/3 haymakers, and 1/3 make sure I don't die. I think that the ramp part is pretty easy to understand. It's going to be a bunch of artifacts like Mind Stone and Pristine Talisman, which are pretty simple and just tap for mana, so I don't want to spend too much time on that, but the rest of the ramp will be in the deck list. Now that we have that covered, let's move on to some of the cool cards that I want to highlight in this deck. The first set of cards that I'm going to cover are the other true Edrazi Titans, the one being Kozilek the Great Distortion, and the other one being Emrakul the Promised End. Emrakul is a massive 13/13 Edrazi that not only allows you to reduce its cost, but also lets you take control of target opponent's next turn, and they get an extra turn after that. However, by the time they get their extra turn, the damage is already done and it's too late. And Kozilek, well, Kozilek's probably one of the more powerful Edrazi Titans because it allows you to discard cards to counter other people's things. So say someone casts a spell for 3 CMC, all you have to do is discard a spell in your hand that has 3 CMC, and it lets you draw 7 cards when it comes in. Such a good card. Another really cool card that I want to cover is Strionic Resonator, because Strionic Resonator will allow you to copy triggered abilities, and one triggered ability that you're going to have a lot of the times is Ulamog's attack trigger, where it exiles the top 20 cards of your opponent's library. Just saying, they can't fight back if they have no cards. Now there are some very important board wipes to have too that you should definitely include. One is Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and the other is All is Dust. Both of these board wipes hit only colored permanents. This means that they lose a lot, and you lose nothing at all. I think you can understand why that's really good for this deck. Another couple of haymakers in this deck are Conduit of Ruin and Artisan of Kozilek. Artisan of Kozilek is an Eldrazi that allows you to have Graveyard Recursion, and has Annihilator 2 to keep giving you value through attacking, while Conduit of Ruin is an Eldrazi that allows you to tutor for a creature with CMC over 7, and lowers the cost of the first creature that you cast each turn, so it continues to give you that value even after you cast it. That's why these cards are so good in this deck. There's one other card that I want to cover before I give you some tips on how to play the deck, and that is Time Sifter. This has each player exile the top card of their library, and the player that had the highest CMC takes an extra turn after this one. So this, in a lot of cases, will mean that you just get to take a bunch of turns in a row, because you're going to have a really high CMC curve compared to everybody else, which is a benefit for this card. I also want to point out this could be kind of a feel bad card, so make sure your playgroup's okay with a card like this. And if some people have high CMC curves, then it's not as bad either. Now this deck is a lot of fun, however I want to cover a few things that you should know on how to play this deck. The first thing you need to make sure is that you have a hand that you start with that has a plan or gives you a very good start. Because if you don't have that, it's not going to be great because this deck's just a little bit slower. That being said, this deck is a little bit slower, but if you can just get started, you can swing the game massively. Really, all you have to do is get to about 10 mana, and once you get your commander, you're going to exile 2 things and start exiling cards from their library. It changes the game very quickly. And again, I want to stress that your opening hand should not only have a plan, but it should have lands and ramp, because if you don't have ramp, you're not going to get to that 10 mana that you're going to need to start having that fun, and it can be kind of a feel bad. And that'll happen every once in a while with this deck, but it's not very often, thanks to the massive amount of ramp that you have in the deck. That should be all you need to know about this deck. As always, the full deck list will be in the description, and if you found this video helpful, consider leaving a like, and for more deck techs or Magic-related content, subscribe. That's going to be all until next time. Whether we meet on this plane or another, have a wonderful day.